the book. And one of the things that I often appreciate when someone releases an album or a book or anything like that with an intriguing title is for someone to explain what it is that the title means. So I thought I would do that for Mind the Gap. And why did we call it Mind the Gap? And we're not just paying homage to the tube, but it actually has a real meaning that goes all the way back to the initial foundations of the research seminar from which the book came. So the research seminar was focused on integrating global learning, and that was actually the title of the of the research seminar. And the idea being basically that sometimes we treat global learning as if it's a monolith, right? That there's the students are students on campus, and then they are students when they are global learning, and that those two things are separate in some way. We do that structurally through the way we set up our institutions. We do that conceptually in the way that we build the curriculum for the students. We do it in the way that we advertise the various programs that we have on campus for students. We treat global learning as if it is something that is in its own little silo and separate from everything else that we do. And one of the major purposes for the research seminar was to figure out where we come short of making those experiences that we value, and we say they're very rich and important experiences, meaningful in the larger context of the student's education. So that is the gap that we're talking about, the gap between global learning and everything else that it is that we do. And I believe that the participants in the seminar would join me in saying that we are, we don't buy the fact that global learning is a silo, right? And so there's a couple of important places where we might find gaps that we need to mine. And so the first would be the idea that global learning is physically different from what we do on campus, right? That you have to go away, you know, and maybe preferably far away or to certain places in order to be a global learner. You can even see this in the literature of the field. The literature on global learning is heavily biased towards study abroad. Even that is changing a little bit, and there's some things that are forcing it to change. So changes in curriculum, the move to more practical, career-oriented outcomes for higher education, whatever we think about those is a question for another day, but that does affect how we look at global learning, how global learning is being structured, those kinds of things. And then there's concerns with equity and equality. Having to do with global learning, and if we think of it as something where you have to go away and it involves plane tickets and passports and visas and those kinds of things, it is just not going to be accessible to all students. So those have been shifting the field, but the study that we've been doing has not been shifting along as fast as the field is changing. We also think that global learning can be more than just study abroad or off-campus domestic study, but that global learning can happen anywhere, including on home campuses, right? So students can be global learners without ever leaving the university environment. The second way that global learning is not a monolith, though, is in time. So it's not something that you are doing and not doing. It's not a switch that you turn on and off. That global learning, and we found this in several of the chapters in the book, can happen anytime, including things that happen to students before they come to us, and things that will happen to students after they leave. And the things that we do to integrate global learning, to mind that gap between global learning and the rest of their education, are important going on into the students' entire lives. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was that the definitions of what global learning are vary hugely. One thing that you will not see in the book, but that we did start with in the seminar, we ended up having some people who had to drop out for various career change reasons, but we actually had one that was, one of our groups was making some progress at looking toward institutional definitions of global learning. And one of the things that they found was that even within a single campus, you will find different definitions of what global learning is. Those definitions vary, and when you have that, it's really hard to have a coherent research stream around the field. So one of the things that we did in the seminar was develop the Center for Engaged Learning statement on global learning, which you can find on the CEL website, where we defined it as a lifelong, right, so it doesn't gap between college and not college, developmental process, so people change, in which the learner engages with difference and similarity and develops capabilities to interact equitably in a complex world. And so that is the approach that we took to global learning that will underscore the things that we saw inside the book.